Human Rights in Ireland by Ciara O'Brien, Lisa Clark, Robyn Holland, Martha McNally and Rebecca Tierney. We're Group 5, Team 5. In this presentation, we will discuss Irish law, EU law, UN law and its influence on human rights in Ireland. We will then apply a human rights-based approach and discuss its impacts on the work of a social care worker in Ireland. We'll explain how human rights is evident in social care. Finally, we will also explore human rights cases in Ireland. The United Nations. The UN is an international organisation comprised of 193 member states. It was developed in 1945 following World War II. Its fundamental principles can be found in the UN Charter. It states its main purpose is to promote and encourage respect for human rights and freedom for all, without discrimination for factors such as sex, age or religion. It has two main bodies which are responsible for human rights, and they are as follows: the Human Rights Council, which is responsible for human rights violations, and the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. This promotes and protects human rights through implementing and monitoring. The UN also implemented the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This was implemented by the UN General Assembly in 1948. This is the cornerstone of international human rights law. The United Nations and its impact on human rights in Ireland. Ireland joined the United Nations in 1955. As Ireland is a member of the United Nations, it is expected to uphold and reflect its views, which are outlined in the international treaties and its UN Charter. In order to do so, Ireland had to make changes to its constitution and its laws. An example of this would be when the UN committee found that Ireland's laws, particularly pertaining to abortion, were cruel and inhumane towards women. It stated through prohibiting abortion and legalising it, this disregarded women's human rights, particularly pertaining to Article 5 and 25. This is due to cases such as Siobhan Whelan's, where she was forced to flee to the UK in order to obtain an abortion. The UN found that the treatment that Siobhan received, which was degrading in nature, affected her mental health and also affected her right to access healthcare, as doctors were unable to provide her with the treatment she needed or the information she needed. Due to this, in May 2018, Ireland held a referendum, which is needed to make any changes to the Constitution in Ireland. This referendum pertained to Article 8 of the Constitution, which pertained to criminalising abortion. The result of this referendum was that abortion was now legalised, and women who met the right criteria could now obtain abortions. Another example would be Ireland ratifying 6 of the 9 UN conventions, which are core human rights treaties. For example, the rights of a child, which is prevalent in Ireland.
In regards to the European Union, there are currently 27 members as of England's recent departure. Ireland joined in 1973 in agreement with EU laws. The EU holds two main streams of human rights: the policy and action, the protection of fundamental human rights for EU citizens, and the promotion of human rights worldwide. The EU and Ireland, as an acting member, have a huge commitment to the protection and promotion of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law worldwide. The Charter of Fundamental Human Rights holds a guarantee to European Union citizens, holding down their rights with the bonds of EU institutions and bodies. Our Irish law consists of several ratified international human rights treaties, even though unless the human rights law has been incorporated into the national law, an individual won't be able to make use of protections afforded under human rights law. For example, in our Irish Constitution, the European Convention of Human Rights Act 2003 and 2014, and where EU law has relevance, the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. As Ireland passes new national laws, we cannot contradict European Union laws. EU law is superior to national law in relation to EU law having power to overrule Irish national law, while some people may depend on EU laws for direct effect in court if there is no national law in place. Our Irish Constitution states that no international agreement shall be part of the domestic law of the state, save as may be provided by the Oireachtas. This means that although Ireland have aligned ourselves with international laws when we ratify the human rights agreements that we have, this will only affect the provision of domestic law through the agreed upon acts of the Oireachtas, or if the right has been specified by the Constitution.
Human rights in Ireland. There are two main bodies that protect and enforce human rights in Ireland. These include Bunreacht Nahéireann, the Irish Constitution, and the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. The Irish Constitution was enacted on the 1st of July 1937 by the Irish people. It's a fundamental legal document outlining how Ireland should be governed. It recognises that all people living in Ireland have fundamental rights which are protected by the Constitution and enforced by the courts. Every constitutional right has the same value and status. No right is more important than the other. Therefore, if there's a need to restrict a person's right, you must weigh up all factors and decide which constitutional right is more important at that time. For example, if you need to restrict a person's right to freedom by locking a door, but in doing so you're ensuring their safety, at that time their safety is more important. The Oireachtas can restrict rights of some people for the common good. For example, this would be evident if a person was arrested and detained for committing a criminal act. So that person's right to liberty was restricted because they were in breach of the public order. So Articles 40 to 44 are human rights in the Constitution. So examples of human rights under the Irish Constitution. So Article 42, the right to education. So the Constitution recognises that the family is the primary and natural educators of their children, and they have the right to provide to them religious, intellectual, moral, physical and social education. Parents are not obliged to send their children to state school or any school for that matter, but they do require that they receive a minimum education. If you do choose to send your child to state school, they are provided a free primary education. So the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission. The Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission is an independent body set up under the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission Act 2014. The IHREC is an independent public body with a legal obligation to promote and protect human rights in Ireland. This means they are required to promote awareness of human rights and ensure they are protected by law. The Commission aims to encourage respect, diversity and equality among all citizens living in Ireland. They provide education, training and advice to the public to inform them of their human rights. So the Commission also review legislation and make recommendations to government to ensure the state are effective in upholding the citizens' rights. The IHREC also conduct inquiries into possible human rights violations and in some cases provide legal assistance to those who wish to take legal action. So some policies within social care practice would also be informed by the IHREC.
So moving on from the last slide, we now come to the human rights approach to the work of a social care worker. So basically everyone is entitled to basic human rights. According to the Equality and Human Rights Commission 2019, these rights apply to everyone, regardless of where they live, what they believe in, and also how they choose to live their lives. Of course, there are exceptions to where these rights may be restricted. For example, if a person breaks the law. Social care workers abide by certain principles that are aligned by human rights. These are through HICWA standards, safeguarding, and also the FREIDA framework. The FREIDA framework is a human rights approach. A human rights approach ensures that a person's needs are being met and that their rights are being respected and upheld. Social care workers must remember to listen to service users in order for their needs to be met. So next we move on to the FREIDA framework. This framework was set up in order to ensure that service users were being listened to, empowered, and being involved in decisions that may affect them. The FREIDA framework stands for fairness, respect, equality, dignity, and autonomy. So fairness, each person is being treated equally and their opinion is being valued in the decisions that are being made that may affect their daily lives. Social care workers provide service users with relevant information and seek the service user's consent on matters that affect them. Respect is having a compassionate manner towards a person's rights, beliefs, property and values. Social care workers show respect to service users through a polite and courteous manner and by delivering person-centred care. So next we're on to equality. This basically means that everyone is given the same opportunity as another person would in that same situation as them, and that there is no discrimination regardless of age, gender, race, sexual orientation, marital status, origin of birth, or political views. Basically, everyone is treated like an equal human being. Social care workers ensure that anyone who needs certain supports basically have the access to that support and get the best outcome from that support. So then on to dignity. So basically dignity is treating people with compassion and in a way that values them as human beings and supports their own self-respect. Social care workers respect the dignity of the service users by respecting their privacy. For example, when doing personal care, making sure the door is closed or that the curtain is pulled. And autonomy also means that people are eligible to receive all relevant information before they are making a choice. They also have the right to have an input on them decisions. Social care workers provide services with correct information and also support participation in these.
So, in conclusion, we have discussed the impact of United Nations on Irish legislation and the different bodies regarding the EU laws on human rights and how they affect the national laws put in place by Ireland. We've gone into detail about what human rights can be defined as and put them into place in place in a day-to-day work in social care and the court system. We have also talked about the types of human rights, for example, the Frida framework and its relevance in a social care setting. We have used the human rights-based approach to explain the use in social care setting, using the O'Keefe versus Ireland and Mallet versus Ireland cases as examples of how it may apply in the Irish court system. These are our references, and thanks for listening. Versus Ireland in a human rights case. So Mallet became pregnant in 2011 and was informed that the fetus would have heart defects and would not survive the duration of the pregnancy. She was advised by many people in the medical field that she could travel abroad to terminate the pregnancy. She went to Liverpool and gave birth to a stillborn child, and when she returned to Ireland, she received no aftercare or no financial assistance from the state. Hospitals could offer aftercare services to patients who had a spontaneous stillbirth, but not to patients who choose to terminate their pregnancy. She then took her case to the Human Rights Court. The committee found that there had been a violation in Article 7. O'Keefe versus Ireland, this is the human rights case. So Louise O'Keefe, human rights are violated as a child. Miss O'Keefe attended a religious primary school where she was sexually abused by her teacher 20 times. Miss O'Keefe took her case to the High Court, where the state successfully won and denied all responsibility for the acts of the teacher. Miss O'Keefe then she brought her case to the European Court of Human Rights, where they found that Ireland failed in its obligation towards Miss O'Keefe to have the right method in place to prevent and to punish sexual abuse in this case, where the sexual abuse took place in the early 1970s. Then the state had violated Article 3, which is to protect against torture, and then Article 13.